2022. We're not even 2 months in at this point. Looking at the network, the current epoch is 71. We have 57 validators at this point. That's up 6 since the last time we met. Of the Carpe installations, almost 900 of them are active right now. That is up from 295 2 weeks ago when we last met. Our Discord community growth, the community right now is sitting at 1,858 members. That is a small uptick since the last time we met, but the numbers do continue to trend upward. Since we last met, a couple of events have occurred. First, as everybody is no doubt aware, things have slowed down during the holidays. No surprise there. We had additional complications with the network incident that occurred, and we'll get an update on that today. As a result of some of the restarts and such that occurred, we have a new epoch boundary. So note the new epoch boundary. It now occurs at 1940 GMT. Excuse me. We also have a number of new proposals in the community, from tech to governance. We'll be covering some of those as part of the main agenda today. So stay tuned for more details on that. Speaking of the agenda today, we're going to start out with Zaki talking to us about the state of the network and giving us an update on what the issues are and what next steps are. Then we're going to do a quick working group roundup. That'll be fairly short, as several of the working groups took last week off. We're also going to get an update on the Prometheus work. We're going to outline a proposed new working group process proposal that is floating around so everyone can understand what's happening with the organization of the community. And then we'll take any questions that come up from the audience. So with that, I would like to pass it over to Zaki to talk about the state of the network and give us an update on the incident, the issues, and next steps. Zaki, over to you.
Okay. So let's kind of summarize a little bit about where we are. So we have been the network has been running stably for the last at least the last week. I would say perhaps a little bit longer than that. We sort of started to get to a stable configuration. This has been basically an ongoing learning process about the right way, or the way to stably configure this network. So in order to sort of like the way in which we like the biggest gap that comes from the upstream DM project is that there's really a lack of public documentation providing guidance on how to configure a DM node. They have a fairly complex configuration file, but what parameters to put in those. So when we were developing OL, we figured out we sort of reverse engineered / brute force our way to a set of configurations that would work. But those configurations, had a lot of possibilities for things that could go wrong. And we embedded those configurations in our tooling, which auto-generates what configuration a different a validator is going to get onboarded with. And so as we sort of started to see this instability in the network, where the network would stop making consensus, we sort of started to look at like, okay, well, where are these configuration values suboptimal? And so we've come up with a bunch of recommendations about how validators should update their configuration. The most important one is we originally designed the network so that the full node network and the validator, every validator on their node connected to the entire full node network. And this appears to have been like one of the principal reasons why when we turn on the network to Carpe users, we stop making consensus, because basically the enhanced load on validators from being fully connected to the full node network causes them to then not be able to respond to consensus messages in a timely manner. Eventually, the network validator nodes started disconnecting from each other. So we did a couple of things that improved things. One is We asked all of the validators to update their configurations to make more outgoing connections. So now essentially every validator is directly connected to every other validator, and that was part of the sort of intended uh, design of the system. The second thing that we've done is we've asked every validator to delete the configuration entry that connects them to the public full node network directly. And then we're asking validators to replace that with a connection to a private full node that the validator themselves is running, which will then, that private full node connects to the public full node network. In order to get network stability, we need some validators to be running full node. This configuration where they have a private full node, where they have the public full node network connected to a private full node connected to their validator node. But what we even more, we just need 2/3 of the validator set to actually make sure that they are disconnected from the public full node network. And so we've made these changes. I think we are already seeing like more stability and improvement as validators have deployed these changes across their networks. And we think that as we kind of get more validators to acknowledge that they've made changes to configuration. The other thing that we've done is we've recommended on your main validator node to run with an 8-core machine. The DM software is somewhat good at parallelizing work, but if you don't have enough capacity on the machine to parallelize the work of verifying all of these transactions, there's a third piece, which is, as I observed yesterday in the Carpe dev channel, Carpe has a bug in it right now where it will submit it. Every node, Carpe node is only allowed to submit 72 proofs per epoch, or every tower builder is only allowed to build add 72 to their tower every epoch. And we do this because it decreases the incentive to like run your VDF on the fastest machine possible. It also makes the overall load on the network more manageable of verifying VDFs. But Carpe is submitting invalid transactions essentially continuously, which is just basically a form of spam. And it would be good to get Carpe updated so that it doesn't do that to decrease the load on the network. But nevertheless, this is designed to be a permissionless network. And we should be able to arrive at a validator configuration that allows us to stay up under Carpe, all of the Carpe nodes sending spam. And so that's always been the goal. And I think we're basically there. And all that remains to be done is getting enough validators to update their configurations so that we can support bringing in even more Carpe users.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So there you have it. Call to action. If you are a validator, there are steps you need to take. They are outlined in the validator operations channel right now, and there's help available too to help get your installations updated. Some good conversation there about technical requirements for both of these VMs. So drop into the validator operations channel, check it out and get going. We want to get back to the point where we can bring in more Carpe users and build that user base significantly across the first quarter of this year. We peaked out at about 1,400 Carpe users before the incident. We're back to 900. So we're making good gains at regaining that, but we're not happy with just 1,400. We want 10,000 Carpe users out there. So please get on board if you haven't done so already and help us get this new configuration in place. Zaki, is there anything else that you want to add? If not, I'll move on to the working group updates.
I think there's an interesting decision that we have to make about, when we can get this bug in Carpe fixed so it's spamming the network less. That's sort of the other uncertainty. But the biggest thing that we're trying to accomplish is get validators to update their configurations to the new configuration that we expect to work.
Yeah, and just on that front, Adal, who normally provides us with the Carpe update at the weekly meetings, is not able to join us today and sends his regrets. He's been driving a lot of the dev on the Carbase side, so unfortunately, we're not going to get that update in the meeting today, but he should be back with us next week. All right, let's transition to working group updates. As I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a bit shorter than usual because several of the working groups did not meet over the holiday last week. The Hustle Karma group and the governance group both did meet, which I think reflects the fact that both of those working groups are really vital right now, and they're doing some very interesting and very important work for the community. Hustle Karma process is starting to solidify. We're seeing good leadership from Red Devil and Wade in particular, but that group is also growing. There is a proposal floating around right now for bootstrapping a minimum viable organizational structure for our working groups. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the meeting today, but that also impacts Hustle Karma. Hustle Karma payments have started to flow. Payments have come out of the full-time worker community program, and payments are coming out of the Moonshot program as well. Invoices are moving through the system. We're starting to, get that economic incentive structure in place that gets people, vested in the community, pays them for their time, gives them a reason to be here, and helps them make it their own. So Hustle Karma, slowly, it's all coming together. If you want to participate in that process, again, we encourage you. All the meeting groups are open to everyone. Simply show up. There are channels inside of Discord for each of the working groups, so you can see what's going on. We're trying to be very transparent about this, and you can also track the events that are upcoming also in Discord and join if you have the time. Next up is branding and comms. There was no meeting last week for branding and comms. There is a meeting today. It takes place usually immediately after this community meeting. So that's Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. Please join us today. The branding and comms group will be meeting. The analytics group did not meet last week. They will be meeting this week on Friday. So if you're interested in the analytics work, join us there. For the governance working group, I'd like to ask Shashank to provide us with an update of what's happening there. Shashank, are you able to speak?
Yeah, I can. So we had two meetings since then, and the first meeting was just introductory, and we were just trying to understand the space. And during our second meeting, which happened last week, we discussed about like the minimum governance structure or the minimum structure required for all the working groups, which was a proposal put forth by Rick, and then uh, followed by looking at what would be the mission of this governance working group uh, with inputs from others. And we decided that it would focus mostly on the policy making and bringing in the voice of everyone in the community. And like we are planning to meet again this week on Thursday. I think this sums up most of it.
Cool, thanks. We'll get to that proposal in just a moment as well, but the last working group that's active at this point is the engineering working group. They did not meet last week. Their next meeting is Monday. The time is still to be determined. If you want to join that working group, jump into the working group or engineering working group channel and voice an opinion about timing if you have a preference on timing, and you can help influence that. There is one additional working group that hasn't started up yet. That is the operations working group. And that goes to the new proposal for working group process and minimum viable organizational structure. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that right now. This is a proposal that is being sponsored by the governance working group. It has already been discussed in the Hustle Karma working group and approved, discussed very briefly informally with branding and comms, analytics and engineering, but we haven't actually done the presentations yet, so we're going to do that. Basically, in a nutshell, what this proposal does is it helps us bootstrap our organizational structure without creating some sort of complex bureaucracy or hierarchy. In short, And this proposal was posted in multiple places, including all of the working group channels. So if you want to jump in and take a look at the PDF that's in there that explains it in more detail, please do so. In a nutshell, it uses working groups as sort of the atomic level of organization for the community, consistent with our approach that this is a duocracy, right? We want to empower the people that are actually doing the work, that are active members of the community. We want them to not only be able to influence the development of this project, but to actually have ownership of this project. And this is the first step of going down that path. Each of the working groups is going to be held to a set of minimum standards, and they can go further than that if they want, but they need to self-organize within those bounds. The key minimum standard is that they need to staff 3 roles. And those 3 roles right now we have named the coordinator, the broker, and the archivist. And the coordinator really acts as the group leader and sort of the point of accountability for the group. Each group needs to have its own domain of expertise. They need to communicate that to the community, and they need to work within the scope of that domain of expertise. The broker is the person that coordinates the missions for that working group inside of Hustle Karma. So, in other words, we're pushing down Hustle Karma management topically to the working groups so they can supervise the tasks that fall within their scope of work. So, that broker within each of the working groups will approve the mission descriptions that relate to their scope of work. They will advise on the bounties. They will help find sponsors for the bounties. They will help find reviewers. And importantly, that broker also sits on the Hustle Karma working group. The last role is the archivist, and the archivist is charged with recording and capturing what's happening at the meetings, promoting transparency, and handling the internal comms within the community. Now, one other important note here is the coordinator, like the broker, also sits on another working group, and that's the new operations working group. So, if you will, we have 2 meta working groups: the Hustle Karma working group, which is composed of all the brokers, and the operations working group, which is composed of all the coordinators. So the operations working group, which is that new group I mentioned a while ago, really has the brief to coordinate between all the working groups, because there's going to be overlaps. There's going to be proposals that impact more than one working group. That person is also going to provide, that working group is also going to provide coordination on issues of importance that are not being managed by any other working group, right? So they pick up things that fall through the cracks. They will also be coordinating solutions to systemic issues. That is, an issue that cuts across more than one working group and affects the project as a whole. So that operations working group, if you will, sets sort of high-level policies, provides a coordination function between the working groups, and keeps us all in sync. The challenge, we don't want to create any kind of a bureaucratic hierarchy here, but we do want to empower people and give them the ability to make decisions and get work done without having to go through a ridiculous process. Now, to make sure that this stays open and egalitarian, working groups are not restricted in terms of their membership. So anyone can be a part of any working group. So even though there's an operations working group and the core members are all the coordinators, if you want to join that working group and you're not a coordinator, feel free. You're welcome. Same thing with Hustle Karma. While the core of the working group is all of the brokers, anyone else that's interested can get involved. So, if you are disappointed that you weren't able to be the coordinator of a specific working group, no problem. Join us on the operations working group, participate, make your voice heard. Now, one other important structure that comes out of this is an arbitration or a dispute resolution hierarchy. Basically, in short, each working group is charged with resolving any disputes that arise within their scope of work. But if they can't resolve it, then they need to escalate it. So all of the working groups escalate to the operations working group that provides an arbitration function between the parties. In other words, it's not a judge that makes a final decision. It facilitates arbitration between the parties and helps them arrive at a conclusion. Now, there's one exception to this process, and that's Hustle Karma. Because Hustle Karma involves money and work and effort, we've provided a 2-tier appeal process for Hustle Karma. If the Hustle Karma group can't resolve the dispute, if a working group can't resolve the dispute related to Hustle Karma, it escalates first to the Hustle Karma working group, who provides arbitration. If you still can't resolve that issue within the Hustle Karma working group, well, then the last appeal is to the operations working group, which will provide the dispute resolution in that case. So that's the basic operational structure. And yes, this is pretty minimal, and it's gone light on details about execution. So things like, how do you define membership? What are the voting rights? How do we select individuals for the key roles, parliamentary procedures, et cetera? All of that is to be determined. And we need to get the operations working group in place to start working on these problems immediately. So what are next steps on operationalizing this? First, we need to complete socialization of the proposal, and this discussion right now is part of that process. But we also need to present inside of the remaining working groups where we have not done so, and that would be engineering, analytics, branding, and comms. So expect me or someone else from the governance working group to show up in those working groups and talk through this proposal with you. Now, if you are a part of a working group and you're in agreement that this is the way that you want to move forward, then we need you to move as soon as possible to designate interim coordinator, interim broker, and interim archivist. The reason I say interim is because we expect there to be a proper election for each of those roles, but we haven't established those procedures yet. So somebody needs to step in there right now so we can operationalize the operations working group, and also because this strongly impacts Hustle Karma coordination. Another top item of business for the working groups, each of the working groups, is you need to define your proposed scope of work, your meetings cadence, your communication threads, and then communicate that to the membership ASAP so that we can get people involved that want to be involved, and we give them a path for participation in the community. Now, that is, in short, I know it doesn't feel like short, the proposal that's on the table. It looks from socialization and from the meetings that we've been able to attend that this has broad support in the community. I expect this is likely going forward. It's my aspiration that we can see the operations working group begin to function starting next week. And then things will move more quickly as we have sort of a coordination and function in place for all of the various working groups. Now, I'm going to stop right there. If anyone has any questions, put up your hand. I'll bring you up to the stage. Shashank, Zaki, do you have anything that you want to add on this topic?
I think it's good. Nothing from my end.
Okay, well, if there are no questions, that's fine. Again, there's a document that explains all this. You can find it inside of each of the working group channels in Discord. So I'm going to, we've got a question. So give me one just second and I will bring you up to the stage. You should have an invitation. Yes, please go right ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, how's it going? So we can get into this, I guess, more on the governance call if we have to. But with those three different seats, the coordinator, broker, and the archivist, how do you prevent, I guess, turning that into a hierarchical structure where those are the three leaders and everybody follows them? What sort of, I guess, natural, I guess, checks and balances will be put into place to prevent that hierarchical structure?
Yeah, it's a good question. And creating that system of checks and balances, that's exactly the way to think about it, right? So we need to define what terms are, what an election process is, and what are the requirements. So, for example, if you haven't attended 3 of the last 4 meetings, should you automatically forfeit that role, right? Those sort of rules need to be put in place. But since this is a high-level proposal, we didn't want to get too far off into the weeds of making specifications. We wanted the community involved in creating those specifications. So it's my hope that one of the first things the operations working group turns to is starting to work through some of those minutiae that are actually super important because they do create those checks and balances. So I don't have the answer to all of those questions right now. I'm hoping the operations group tackles that as soon as they are able to have their first meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for caring about this. All right. If there are no other questions, I want to hand it over to Nordspace to talk about what is going on with Prometheus and some of the other work that he's involved in. Nordspace, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. Cool. So, I mean, obviously, due to the last incidents, the last few weeks, we somehow started talking about having Prometheus installed to collect the Prometheus metrics that the validator nodes are basically exporting. I mean, one of the options, obviously, that everybody could host their own. That would be nice. But also just to have an overall idea or an aggregation of what's happening with all the validators, all the full nodes. We started the central Prometheus stack that involves two components. The first is Prometheus, and the second is Grafana. I set this up using DigitalOcean, just like the simplest. Just got a droplet. There is the marketplace. You can find both applications, and then I started collecting some IPs and validator IDs from you guys. At the moment, we have 12 targets. So basically, Prometheus goes to the node, checks the metrics, retrieves the metrics in a kind of pull fashion. Not that the servers are communicating with it. It happens the other way around. The metrics I would say are interesting. I On the Grafana dashboard we created three types of dashboards. The first ones are like just experimentals. We are trying to figure out what DM node is exporting and building some kind of useful graphs from that. There are the system dashboards. These are basically the metrics that the Prometheus node exporter, CPU, RAM, disk space, network bandwidth, and so on. Just the default basically that come with Prometheus node exporter. And then there are validator monitoring dashboards. And these basically, whenever we experiment with something, we find it useful. We are moving these panels or these graphs to the validator monitoring. You are welcome to first to give me the IP and the validator node ID or the full node ID or the VFN ID. You would like to download the node Prometheus exporter, open these ports 9100, 101, 102, and then basically also check the Grafana URL. Whatever I'm saying right now, I will just share one link that has all the information. And we would like to have some feedback on the Grafana dashboards. I mean, a shout out to Abed Hawa, who actually built the dashboard. I'm mostly interested, or this is what I know is basically to do the infrastructure, just building these, connecting them together, collecting the IBs and so on. And Abed is building the dashboards. Two themes, or actually three things that are going on with this setup. The first thing is on the technical side. So we are trying to see how to get more information from the nodes. For example, which network are they running on? Which version are they deploying? And I don't know, whatever other interesting metrics we can collect. There is the security. At the moment, we believe it's not the best to expose three boards to the internet. So we said, okay, let's only allow the Prometheus IP to access these ports. But yeah, I mean, maybe we could also have a node exporter configuration where we are only sending the metrics that we want. We don't like expose something like the desk usage or the desk layout. just trying to basically tighten the setup as much as possible. So if anyone is like aware of these kind of issues, specifically with hosting a Prometheus and collecting metrics from nodes or from servers, then please, we're looking for more feedback on that direction. And the final thing is about the decentralization. Obviously, like both of these Grafana and Prometheus instances are just basically run by me at the moment. But it would maybe make more sense if we have multiple of these instances. I don't think everybody should run their own Prometheus instance. That will be really, like, it will be maybe asking too much if everybody wants to run. But how to make sure that it's not just like a single part who's collecting the metrics and who's viewing them. Um, I I think that's it. Thank you.
Cool. Nordspace, Abed, thank you very much for your work on this. Do we have any questions? Anyone have questions relating to Prometheus and Grafana? Okay, that was the last formal item on the agenda. So at this point, I want to open it up to the room. Does anyone have any other questions or topics they would like us to address today? Now is your chance. Put up your hand. I'll bring you up to the stage. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, but I'm going to just talk a little bit. If somebody does have something and you're looking for how to request to get up on stage, go ahead and go for it. But looking forward, we will be meeting next week at this time. We're back on our regular cadence now with the new year. We would like to have contributor presentations in future weekly meetings. So, for example, like Nordspace talking about what's happening with Grafana, New Drew talking about what's going on with the Explorer. If you're working on any cool projects related to OL, we want to know about it. We'll give you a platform, come up on stage, talk to the community about what you're doing, see if you can find some collaborators, and expose your work so that we can all get involved with this and you can help make this a better place for everyone. So if you have something you would like to talk about at future meetings, reach out to Shashank or myself. We'll get you on the agenda. We would love to have you, and that would be appreciated. And I see that we've got a question, so I am inviting you to speak right now. Come on up, Batrester. Okay, Batrester, you should have received an invitation from me to join the stage. You'll need to act on that. You need to accept that invitation. Yeah, I can't just pull you up here on your own. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah, I do see a message from Bartrester on validator operations. I think it's a really important tool for monitoring the node's health. If you want to speak more about it, and then also ask the question, please go ahead.
Arrester, we've got you on the stage now, but I show you as muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are. Welcome.
Okay. So this is a tool I've put together and I've been testing for the last couple of weeks. It's just monitors various parameters for the node, like offline, not invalidator set, votes unchanged, basically to give validators a little more insight onto how their node is performing without having to, constantly go in and check their monitor page, etc. So, and then I just have it posting to a Discord channel that I've created myself. And whenever stuff goes wrong, it tags me and lets me know what's wrong, and then eventually once I fix it, it shows that the error is cleared. So my proposal is that we create a Discord channel like Validator Health, and to get monitoring for your node for free, you can just submit a PR with your details, and it'll send a notification to that channel, whichever channel we create. I don't have permissions right now to create a Discord channel here, but if someone could do that for me, optionally, you can run it in standalone mode and just have notifications to your private Discord server and create a channel there. So yeah, this is just an attempt to just make it easier and proactively notify you about your validated node status without having to constantly go in and check what's happening.
Very cool. Thanks for that. I hadn't followed that discussion. I wasn't aware of that. If you could, would you try to make the engineering working group meeting, which is coming up on Monday, discuss this, get them on board with it, and then we can try to operationalize that within Discord. But I think the engineering working group is probably the right work thread for that to go through right now. Obviously, if the work's done, everybody's happy with it, we don't need a complex approval process or anything like that. But just in terms of coordinating, we're trying to get people into those flows now. So that would be awesome if you can make that happen.
Yeah, sounds good. And right now I have an initial set of health checks that are being performed, and I'm open to feedback and collaboration on if there are any other parameters that validators want notifications on.
Excellent, excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Batraster? Okay, we're moving into the home stretch here. Just a few reminders. Number one, validators, you've got work to do to bring you in line with the new standards for operations. So please check into the Validator Operations channel here in Discord, or reach out to Zaki or myself or any of the validators for more information about what needs to be done. Number two, the branding and comms working group is coming up here in 20 minutes. Please join that. We've got a couple of proposals on the table. We're trying to get things moving around defining our brand, right? And improving our communications. I mean, fundamental principle for a decentralized, autonomous organization, and that's the road we're heading down, folks, is that the comms have to be there. The people that are voting on proposals have to be educated about what's happening. The transparency has to be there. So branding and comms, super important right now. Join us in 20 minutes. Somebody just pinged me on a back channel, asked me to mention another proposal that is floating around. And that is, there is a proposal right now, a very early stage proposal, to put in place a scorecard for validators. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is as sort of the precursor or the foundations for the information that will enable the team's proposal that's been under discussion since before the holidays. And also just sort of a way to put a little social pressure on the validators to stay in line with best practices and to be a reliable validator set for us. So that scorecard, early days, it's floating around. If you see something about it, that's what it's about. That is going to be coming through the engineering and probably the operations working group as well, I would expect. But early days on that, just FYI, if you see it, that's probably an important discussion to get involved in. And I'm looking here over my notes right now. Is there anything else I wanted to mention to you guys? No, just that's it for me. And that would be it for our meeting this week. Just a reminder, it's still super, super early days. It's a really good time to get involved in some of the really influential working groups like the Hustle Karma group, the governance group, and of course the engineering group. But we need more workers. We need more people who are committed to this. Help us shape this. Make it something you all want to own, because that's where we're headed. That's it for me. I'm looking here at the audience right now to see if anybody has their hand up. So this is the last call for comments or questions. Anyone? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no, and I'm going to say thank you to everybody that showed up to present at the meeting this week. We appreciate it. I will see you all back here next week at the same time, and in between, I'll see you all online. So thank you, everybody, and Happy New Year. Goodbye.